Hey folks, this is Phelan McPhalen. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody had a great weekend. I did. I got some rest. I did some reading, some study, and I was thinking about what to do. Another podcast for this week, and I was thinking, and Don mentioned something yesterday about the red heifer, and I didn't realize that a red heifer had actually been located, actually a number of them, and exported to the Israelis. I didn't realize that. I didn't know that happened. And so I got on the forum and I said, well, hey, this is big news, you know. And I was pretty much attacked on that forum, on Don's forum. People don't believe the prophecies. And this is something that obviously has been going on for a long time. I wanted to just clear up in just a few words, not a very long, lengthy podcast or anything like that. I just wanted to clear up in a few words what the significance is of their locating a red heifer and exporting it over to Israel. I wanted to explain that because a lot of people, they have this sort of knee-jerk reaction against any kind of restoration of the Jews, any kind of restoration of Israel, any kind of restoration of the Levitical ordinances. There's a sort of knee-jerk reaction where they think, oh, it's blasphemy to say that the sacrifices will be recontinued. It's blasphemy to say that the Jews are going to be reconstituted as a nation. And they said this before 1948. They used to say that the Jews will never be reconstituted as a nation again. And, of course, they were wrong. And right now what they're saying is there's never going to be another temple, etc., etc. We don't know that, though. We don't know there's not going to be another temple. They may very well have another temple. Now they're going to be fought tooth and nail, I believe. I think it's not going to be easy. But if you get a reconstituted priesthood and you get a reinstitution of those Levitical ordinances, it's very possible that there may be. I don't think you necessarily need a temple in order to fulfill certain prophecies. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's needed. But I think it's very possible. And even some of the church fathers of the early centuries believed that there was going to be a rebuilt temple, and the Antichrist was going to sit in that temple. So you can get this from Irenaeus, you can get this from Hippolytus, but, it's part of the tradition, the prophetic tradition of the church, that would take place. We definitely don't want to say that it can't happen, but the significance of the red heifer is just this. Has nothing to do with salvation. It has to do with sanctifying to the purifying of the flesh, removal of ceremonial and legal uncleanness. As Paul said, that the ashes of the red heifer sanctify to the purifying of the flesh. So they remove ceremonial defilement. Now, at the present time, the priests are ceremonially unclean, so they're not going to be recognized by God. But because God instituted the Levitical ordinances, because He instituted that, it's going to be recognized. Once that ceremonial uncleanness is removed, He's going to recognize them again, and then they'll be able to go about their business. And it's not, like I said, nothing to do with soteriological or salvific efficacy. It has nothing to do with the equation. But you want to still understand that after AD 30, the Levitical ordinances were still going on. You could find it in the book of Acts. You could find it in Paul's epistles. Paul recognized that there was a Levitical priesthood when he wrote Hebrews. So, although the ordinance is nailed to the cross, we understand that. Of course, the veil between the sanctuary and the holy place was rent in AD 30. Yes, we understand that. We understand that sacrifices have nothing to do with putting away sin. But we also understand that ordinances have to do with the legal and ceremonial aspect of the law. Now, whether you believe that's still in effect or not, doesn't matter. The point of the matter is that years ago I predicted that the Gentiles were going to apostatize. They were going to dive rapidly into apostasy, and that the Jews, God was going to cut off the Gentiles, return to the Jews. So this was back in 2007. This was back in 2008. I made that prediction. People laughed, oh yeah, that's not going to happen, it's going to get better and better. Didn't get better and better. We know that for a fact. And guess what? A couple of years later, that's when the whole ex-Christian movement took off running. The whole ex-Christian movement was not on the scene in 2008. It took off running. It started trickling in around 2011, 2012. It became a mighty stream by, say, 2015, it was a mighty, mighty stream that was carrying a lot of Christians away with it. Today, it's one of the biggest movements on the internet. You've got the Mything Christianity movement, all these little scholars and academics that are cooking up all these theories against Christianity. These people were on the fringes back in 2008. Now they're at the forefront, and big apologists, major apologists, professional apologists are having to take them seriously. So these apostate movements, they have taken off running since the time I made that prediction. And conversely, this is what's interesting. Conversely, Hebraic Christianity has increased rapidly at the same time. So while there's been a shift of the Gentiles toward forms of apostasy and unbelief, there's been a shifting of the Christian element back to Hebraic-centered forms of Christianity. So you have people now that are even, Reformed people are starting to refer to Jesus as Yeshua. They're starting to use that Hebrew terminology. Here, Don uses it all the time. So they're starting to fall in line with this whole movement back to the Hebraic roots, if you will, of Christianity. And I'm not speaking specifically of the Hebraic roots movement. I think that's a little extreme from what I've seen of it. But there's been a corresponding interest in Hebraic-centered forms of Christianity, wanting to get back to the Jewish roots of the gospel. And this is another thing that's only cropped up in recent years. So it's interesting, and it's also significant from a prophetic perspective. So anybody that says that this is nothing, got the eyes closed. And the thing about full preterists that can really be a little bit frustrating, and you have to have done this for many years in order to kind of be, roll with the flow and understand that this is how it's going to be, is that people who don't have any interest in studying the details of prophecy, people who don't have any intention of interpreting the details of prophecy, people who generalize all of the prophetic details, who spiritualize away all of the prophetic texts, when something like this happens with the red heifer, now all of a sudden they jump into the front ranks and want to pontificate and dictate to everyone else what's prophetically significant and what's not. And that can be a little bit frustrating because it's coming from people who've made no effort to understand prophecy, who have done nothing to interpret the prophecies, and in harmony with all the other prophetic texts, who spiritualized away the prophecies, who have told us for decades that the details don't matter, it's the general effect that matters. Now they're going to come, now when something like this happens, when you get a pandemic, or when you get a viral scare, or when you get a natural disaster, or when you get something like this that's prophetically significant, they'll jump to the front of the line and they'll try to pontificate and dictate to Bible-believing Christians, to people who do believe in prophecy, what's significant and what's not. And that's kind of frustrating, but you got to kind of roll with it too, because that's the way it is. But anyways, didn't want to take up too much of your time. I figured that I would just do that short podcast just to, why pick on the red heifer is what I'm saying. Why pick on the red heifer? It's got nothing to do. If you don't believe the prophecies, that's great, but your view of the prophecies isn't going to control anyone else's view of the prophecies. There's people who are going to hold to a literal interpretation. They're going to see these things as prophetically significant. So that's about it for today. Thanks again for tuning in. Hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thanks again for your thoughts, your comments, your observations, and critiques. I do take everything to heart. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.